Have you ever played a game and thought, this needs more players? Well, fortunately there is a wide variety of games that offer an easily accessible multiplayer experience, and even for single player titles, people have found clever ways to still make it a larger experience. Speedrunners specifically have notoriously been able to do this time and time again, and that got me thinking, what is the biggest co-op speedrun ever? And by that I mean, what speedrun has involved the most amount of players? Today I've compiled 12 different runs of various lengths that steadily increase in player count. Let's figure out what the biggest co-op speedrun is. Starting off pretty tame, I thought it would make the most sense to look at two different relay runs which are popular in different communities, Mario and Zelda. I could simply pull up a wide variety of two-player co-op runs across multiple of these titles, but that's too easy. Let's make that number bigger, and I know the perfect way to do that. Relay runs. What is a relay run? Well, it consists of multiple players taking turns and competing in different sections of the same run. On the Mario end, there's the 3D Mario 1862, which consists of grabbing all 120 stars in Super Mario 64, 120 shines in Super Mario Sunshine, 120 stars in Super Mario Galaxy, 242 stars in Super Mario Galaxy 2, 380 stars in Super Mario 3D World, and finally all 880 moons in Super Mario Odyssey. While there is a solo version of this run, splitting up the run into 6 people, 1 per game, makes this 30+ hour run way more digestible. It's not surprising to see the record in this be faster than the solo variant because each person can individually play the game that they are best at, rather than one person having to be decent enough in every single one back to back. On the Zelda side, there's a similar type of run, albeit shorter. The 3D Zelda Relay also typically requires 6 players, requiring them to complete the categories Ganon's Source requirement in Ocarina of Time, all dungeons restricted in Majora's Mask, and any percent in Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild. There is also a version of the Relay revolving only remakes, but that features less people. Our goal for today is to keep going up, so let's skip over that. Next up on the list is Trivia Murder Party, a game that is included in Jackbox Party Pack 3, which is an installment of an ongoing series of bundled competitive party minigames. While traditionally all the titles on these packs are not games you may typically consider speedrunnable, people have found ways to do so in specific ones. In Trivia Murder Party, there are 3 categories to choose from: any percent, simply trying to get through the game as fast as possible until one player wins; 100%, doing the same thing as any percent but getting through the 10 intended questions before the final round first; and lastly, Def percent, making all players die as fast as possible. Both Def and Any percent have runs featuring the maximum number of players allowed, 8. Both these runs are really simple and short, being 1 and 4 minutes respectively. In fact, the only speedrun YouTuber to ever exist here even took part in one of these. Next up is a game that I honestly never expected to mention on this channel, Among Us. Yeah, remember that game that everyone couldn't get enough of while they were stuck in their house in 2020? Well, it somehow has a fleshed out speedrun page. With this game being fully based on multiplayer teamwork and deception, the majority of runs here require at least a few players, at least the categories that are actually played. This leaderboard is a bit bloated, separating arbitrary amounts of players and different numbers of maps, with most categories being fully empty. Once searching through all of this though, I was able to uncover a 9-player co-op run under co-op default tasks, 8 to 10 crewmates, mirror HQ, and no rules allowed. Yeah, say all that back to back 3 times fast. Anyways, this run isn't too complicated, only being 2.5 minutes. It consists of all the players being in a voice call at the same time, and coordinating which tasks need to be done by which person in order to finish the game as quickly as possible. I'm not sure I'd personally be a fan of 8 other people talking to me while trying to finish a game, but suit yourself. Moving in a completely different direction to the previous, SWAT 4 is a mid-2000s first-person shooter and has built up a tiny speedrun community over the years. It may be small, but not enough for it to have multiple varying co-op runs. When you browse the leaderboard, you may only be able to find runs up to 7 players, but this actually goes quite further. Rummaging around YouTube is an upload from the speedrun event ESA Summer 2019, where 10 people performed a co-op all-missions run. While there may be only 4 people visible on screen, for visibility reasons, there are more people credited both on screen and in the description, with the higher player count being even more obvious when watching the gameplay. There's some pretty amusing points in this run, such as players accidentally shooting their teammates, with the amount of people running around making this trickier than a typical run. Rotating back to more familiar territory is yet another Mario run, except this is slightly different than you may expect. Super Mario 64 Co-op is a PC port of the Nintendo 64 title which allows you to play with upwards of 16 players at once. This leaderboard has every main category on the original release, plus a couple more. The most popular by far is 120 star, the 100% category. With players being able to focus on different stars simultaneously, the record gets dramatically lowered, clocking in at 15 minutes versus the typical hour and a half required at top level in the vanilla game. With this both being a PC release and multiplayer, there's a lot of unique details about this version, most notably being in high-resolution widescreen and having a wider array of character options to pick from. Staying with PC games, I was trying to think of different games that naturally allow for a large amount of players, and that got me poking around. I quickly realized how huge Roblox speedrunning seems to be nowadays, with too many different runs to comprehend at once. For anyone who isn't tapped into what Roblox is, it's more of a platform than a specific game. It allows players to build and program their own maps, which has in more recent times led to there being speedrun leaderboards for over 500 of these games. With this being a multiplayer title at heart, there's naturally a ton of different co-op runs I was able to pin down, but one of the largest I was able to find was Break-In 2, which has multiple 16-player runs. I'm not gonna lie, I had a short-lived Roblox phase when I was younger, but I haven't been tapped in for quite a while. This specific title seems to be an exploration and puzzle-solving type game, with it being a bit of a scary mystery vibe. These runs all sit in the 30-minute range, with there being 4 different endings you can reach in the game. I know I just mentioned 2 16-player runs back to back, but I promise things are about to get way bigger. So far we've been talking about specifically video games at heart, but what about different kinds of games that have also been turned into video games? Clubhouse Games' 51 Worldwide Classics is a compilation consisting of tabletop and board games. The speedrun.com page for this is quite healthy, with there being multiple categories for different types of games, as well as having individual game leaderboards. Some of these are quite demanding, with the longest being to win every single game with a random opponent online, with the record there being over 3 hours. Those runs are cool and all, but that's not what I want to talk about today. In this case, I want to highlight yet another run that took place at ESA. 360 Chrism hosted a run on stage for this game, except every single game had to be beaten by a different player, leading to this consisting of 51 total players. With different people having different skill levels, this run wrapped up in just barely under 3 hours. So I've already mentioned some different PC titles at this point, but there's one obvious one I've yet to mention today, Minecraft. While the game has never lost relevancy, in the late 2000s the game received a major new spike in activity, and this is easily reflected in speedrunning too. It's now become one of the most popular games to speedrun of all time, with the most competitive runs featuring highly optimized records that took an unbelievable amount of time and attempts. The main leaderboard alone is unbelievably huge, but for this specific video, I want to move over to the category extension leaderboard, which houses more obscure category goals. This includes the very prestigious Stack of Lime Wool and Sonic Tails and Knuckles. I'll let you go explore what those runs actually entail, but I want to talk about another one, Mine a Chunk. What is a chunk? Well, it's a 16 by 16 block segment of a world that goes all the way down to the bottom bedrock and can be as high as 256 blocks. So in this case, the goal of the category is to completely empty and mine out a single chunk. There's quite a lot of variance for this run, but for this case, the most amount of players have participated in RSG, or Random Seed Generated. This means that you can't type in a specific game seed that gives you the same exact world ahead of time, and you have to completely roll the dice and play what you get. Time starts when a player enters a command to set the world time to 0, and ends when the chunk is completely mined out. The record is currently under 9 minutes, but this only has 31 players. So why did I include this after already mentioning a run over 50? Well, it's because second place is way larger than first place, consisting of 54 total players. This run is only 3 seconds slower than the other run. Okay, for the third time in this video, I have to talk about Mario, and at this point, you may be a bit sick of it, but with the series being one of the most popular of all time, it's not shocking to see it be twisted in every single way you could imagine. I want to talk about Super Mario 64 yet again, but instead of it being a PC port, it's actually regarding the original game, and I promise it's worth it. With it being a retro Mario title, it's not a shock to see it's been heavily broken just like many of the entries before it. While the original intended way to beat the game as fast as possible takes 70 stars, people have repeatedly discovered new ways to lower this, with 16, 1, and even 0 stars being a viable option for game completion. Today I'm going to keep it to 70, because time and time again, people have organized relay races that consist of swapping players after every single star. The first properly notable instance of this is in 2017, which, surprise, once again was held by ESA. With people holding a wide range of skill levels, this run took almost 2 hours, in comparison to the solo world record that can do this in under 50 minutes. ESA did this for a second time in 2018, except held 2 simultaneous relays at once and made it a head-to-head race. This run took a bit longer to conclude, with both teams taking over 2 hours to complete. With these relays being really well received and really entertaining in concept, this idea was properly executed 2 more times years later in 2023. Both of these were organized by King J0444, with both taking place at speedrun events called PACE, with the 2 in this case being PACE Summer and PACE Fall 2023. While the first was done individually in the event practice room, the second was more properly organized and was performed live on stage. It's pretty cool to say that I was able to participate in both of these, with there being a player for each star, as well as 3 for each Bowser fight and 1 for Bowser in the Sky. The total number of participants for this run is a staggering 74. I mean, there were 140 total people if we go back to that relay race, but those were 2 simultaneous runs at once. I wouldn't say that's fair. We may already be moving up to the big leagues in terms of numbers, but there are still 2 more runs that somehow outbeat this. Climbing up the ladder, we have Factorio, a construction simulation game, and honestly, that's as far as I can personally describe it. It's personally hard for me to follow or dive into much about this title, but it has become quite beloved by a decent amount of people, enough for there to be a huge speedrun leaderboard for it. One of the most popular is the New Game Plus Massive Multiplayer category, and you probably see where this is going. These runs consist of a ridiculously high amount of people, with the record containing a whopping 89 players. Yeah, imagine wrapping your head around collaborating with that many people for just a 1-hour speedrun. To wrap up the end of this list, we gotta visit our friends at ESA one more time, and while you may be a little tired of it by now, it's yet another Mario relay. For once, this is a different Mario title, this time being Super Mario Odyssey. This is in a similar fashion to the Super Mario 64 relay, and has the goal of beating the game as fast as possible, with players switching out between every moon. With there being 1 person per moon, the player total for this run spikes up to 124, the required amount of moons for an 80% completion. This has been by far the highest player count I've seen for a single run, but if you've somehow discovered something even bigger, please let me know in the comments. With speedruns typically being seen as individuals trying to lower times as much as they can, it's refreshing every so often to mix it up and watch runs that take a bit of teamwork. And in the case of today's topic, a lot of teamwork. I could go on for days and days about the variety of co-op speedruns people have done over the years, but please also let me know if there's any runs you personally thought should have been squeezed between this list. It's really neat to see how far the speedrun community has stretched different games and turn them into more of a team effort. Until there's more runs like this to talk about, that's all I have to share, so thanks for watching.